Hello and welcome back to 4FS Gaming. This is Doc, and today we're going to be looking at the dark side counterparts to the last Battlefront 2 video I did. But before that, I'll actually be touching on some points I failed to mention in the first video, but overall, this video will be focused on BB-9E, and what he brings to the table versus BB-8. Getting right down to business, let's start with the stats that I actually didn't mention in the first video. So consider this an addendum to the BB-8 review. Quickly starting with health, BB-8 has 650 health with no way to improve it with cards, and can regen 300 of it naturally. It is gained back at a rate of 60 health per second over 5 seconds. This can be upped to a very nice 400 health with the relevant star card. You also heal back 20 health per kill, regardless of the type of unit you defeat. And the damage increase I mentioned in the last video on just the screen notes, it's actually obtained with a star card that improves damage by 1 for every 3 enemies killed, up to a maximum damage of 36 per tick, up from 29. Now then, starting with the actual main focus of the video, let's start talking about BB-9E. To start, BB-9E has 600 health, a little bit less than his counterpart, and as a result can only regenerate 250 of it naturally over about 4 seconds. The possible amount of health you can recover can be improved to 350 health with star cards, which gives you a pretty decent buffer for taking damage before the damage will start sticking. His primary weapon is the same as BB-8's in all but 2 ways, as I mentioned in the first video. It does less damage per tick, coming in at 24 instead of 29. This isn't a massive difference, and is a fair trade-off considering the secondary effect the weapon gains from having less damage. Every 4.5 seconds, a little yellow circle will outline your crosshair, indicating a stun charge is ready to use. These stun charges are really useful, since there's no prerequisite to using them, and they are on a really short cooldown. Each charge will stun one enemy for 1 second, preventing movement, rolls, ability activation, and shooting. This added utility at the expense of raw damage really shows what BB-9E is best suited for, which is a far more supportive role than BB-8, as all of his abilities either do less damage in exchange for utility or do no damage to become purely supportive abilities. So let's take a closer look at what these abilities are and what they bring to the table. Like BB-8, BB-9E has a third passive ability that we can go over. On top of better objective control and healing on kills, he also has Bacta Support. This ability slowly but steadily heals nearby allies for small amounts of health over time. Through some fairly rudimentary and brute force testing, I found that it works like this. Every 1.5 seconds, all nearby allies gain 3 health. This does not trigger their health regen, it is just a passive 3 health boost every 1.5 seconds. And this passive healing does not affect BB-9E in the slightest, it is exclusively for teammates around him, meaning the only way to gain back health after losing it permanently is to kill enemies. There is a star card available that can improve the incredibly short range at the cost of taking longer between each heal, but really, you're better off taking star cards that improve his other abilities or other stats, as those cards can be far more impactful and noticeable than a small healing effect that I have personally never noticed while playing as a trooper whenever BB-9E was around. Now, time to move on to his active abilities. Starting from the left, we have Smokescreen. Like BB-8's left ability, it's a pretty simple ability. For the active time of 12 seconds, a smokescreen will be left behind BB-9E wherever he goes, blocking line of sight to anyone on either side of it. And considering how fast the little droid can move around, the smokescreen has a really wide range and lasts for a few seconds after being deployed. There is a card that lets you improve the smoke's range by 2 meters, but again, considering how much you move around and how fast you move, and how fast you can spread the smoke, there's really no need to use it. But the smoke isn't actually the only part of this ability. There is a part 2. Since no one, even your teammates, can actually see through the smoke, BB-9E uses a scan pulse to let him and his teammates see through it. These scan pulses have a long range at about 30 meters, and highlights enemies in a bright red outline. But besides letting you and your allies see through the smokescreen, the scan does not have any extra effects like weakening enemies to damage. While this ability is best used hiding your allies, it can also help you escape danger, even when out in the open. And thanks to the pretty short cooldown of 18 seconds, you'll almost always have it available when you really need it most. Moving to the right, the ability there is called Charge Up. This ability acts rather similarly to the Officer's Command abilities in that it buffs you and nearby teammates for a set duration. Charge Up instantly cools down all allied blasters, gives them a gold cooling bar so they never overheat, and if they get closer to the center of the ability, their abilities will have a sped up cooldown as well. The active part of the ability lasts for 5 seconds, with the cooling effect lasting after the ability is on cooldown, meaning teammates will be left with a gold reload bar as if they just did the gold section of the overheat minigame. On top of that, the ability has a very fast cooldown of 15 seconds, which can be improved to an incredible 10 seconds with the relevant star cards. The range was a bit hard to pin down, as the gold pulse effect that you see going along the ground is not the actual range of the ability. My best guess is anywhere from 5 to 10 meters. The best way to tell how many allies are within range of the ability is to keep an eye on the ability marker itself, as it'll keep track of how many allies you can buff with the charge. And now, we move on to BB-9E's answer to the dangerous cable spin, the charge spin. And while it's not as scary in terms of raw damage, like everything in the droid's kit, it packs in a lot more utility in exchange. Let's start with the basics. Once you activate the ability, it takes 1 second to charge up before any effect occurs. You are slowed down and gain high damage reduction just like the cable spin. After the short charge up time, there are a few different effects that can happen depending on how close enemies are to BB-9E when he activates the ability. Starting from the furthest point away and working our way in, at about 15 meters and closer, all enemy blasters and grenades will be jammed for 3 seconds, and their blasters will immediately go into their overheat cycle after those 3 seconds are up. Moving closer in, if an enemy is within 6 meters, not only will their weapon and grenade be jammed, but they will be pushed back and receive 90 damage. This initial push effect actually lasts for around the first second the ability is active after the initial charge. For the next 7 seconds, every second, there will be a 30 damage area of effect pulse and a 6 meter radius around BB-9E. And after all that is said and done, the ability has a 25-second cooldown with no way to improve it with cards. So let's summarize what the ability does. There are 8 damage ticks over 8 seconds, with the first tick dealing 90 damage and the rest dealing 30, for a potential total damage of 300. With a certain star card equipped, if you hit 2 or more enemies, the damage is doubled to 60 per tick, meaning total damage goes up to 510. But the initial 90 damage cannot be improved. The damage and push range is 6 meters and the disable range is 15 meters. It is certainly a more complex ability compared to BB-8's spin, but far less deadly in terms of raw damage. But don't let that lower damage fool you. It does have its advantages. For one, it can immediately clear off any objective because of the push, instead of BB-8's, which can leave him in a tricky spot if he's not positioned well. And while the sheer damage of the cable spin is impressive, it won't save him from concentrated fire from enemies outside of the 4 to 6 meter range. But the additional push effect of the charge spin immediately clears any troopers and even heroes off of the point, and with a certain star card equipped, you can improve that push distance by an extra 4 meters. But that does come at the cost of a longer cooldown time, so you'll have to decide if it's worth it for yourself. The overheat and jamming also makes it safe to use even if you're not quite close enough to push enemies away. Unless there's a lightsaber charging at you, since lightsabers can't really be jammed. And finally, like BB-8's cables, the jamming, push, and damage effects are all transcendent, so they all go through low obstacles that BB-9E can easily hide behind, making it a generally safe ability to use. Now then, time for some quick tactics, and then my final verdict on these two little droids. BB-9E really is not fit for trying to solo down anything, except maybe when chasing low health targets down. He lacks any readily available burst options and will likely take a lot of damage by venturing out on his own. His smokescreen can provide an emergency exit from bad situations, but it is far better used supporting your team. Charge up only brings a small benefit to you, making sure that your shock prod won't run out of charge, but brings a much bigger buff to the rest of your team. Your spin is great for clearing points, but not keeping them clear, since the residual damage is not that great. Bottom line, the common factor in how good you can be with BB-9E and how much you'll enjoy him is how much do you like supporting your team. If you do like supporting your team, the droid will tick most if not all of your boxes. If not, then you're better off picking a different hero, or if you're on the resistance side of things, BB-8 is probably more your style. Personally, I prefer BB-9E over BB-8, simply because I do like the more supportive and defensive type classes in this game, and all of his abilities together are just more fun to use for me. He's also really enjoyable to play in co-op maps where you're defending capture points, but that's just my love for co-op mode shining through. And with that, this video is coming to a close. Now that I've gone over and explained the mostly full picture of the differences between BB-8 and BB-9E, which is your favorite? Should more out-of-left field heroes be introduced in future updates? Do either of these heroes need nerfs? Buffs? Are they both good where they are? Do only one of them need to be adjusted? Let's go ahead and start a discussion about it. In terms of the next Star Wars Battlefront 2 video I'll be making, it will probably be a redux for the Death Trooper, since it'll be a fairly short and easy video to make because they've only received a couple changes, such as they actually have the correct weapon now, and have had some of their other movement stats changed. Or maybe we'll start covering some of the new infiltrators that have been introduced into the game over the past few months. There is certainly no shortage of content to cover, so there are plenty of things we can talk about in future videos. Until then, this is Doc from 4FS Gaming. I certainly hope you all enjoyed the video, and I will see you all in the next one.